This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911, a pool drowning and a helpless child.
I knew something major had happened. She just kept screaming. I felt for her pulse, didn't feel anything.
And a heroic neighbor.
The fact that I knew CPR made me calm.
Plus, a joyride leads to a devastating accident.
He had massive bleeding from both sides of his neck.
I've never seen an injury of this type on someone who's still alive.
On Rescue 911.
For many of us, neighbors are people with whom we exchange hellos, but they're not really part of our lives. On August 16th, 1993, in Burlington, Vermont, 15-year-old Paula Haskell was taking care of 2-year-old Wesley and her 2 other brothers when she discovered that the person living on the other side of the fence was not just another face on the block.
JJ and I were watching TV. David was sleeping, and Wes was sitting there in the middle of the room playing with some of his toys. Wes got up, and we thought he went upstairs, because you could hear him going up the stairs. And so we thought he went up to play with David.
Nonsense. I'm your friend. I want to give you something.
A few minutes later, I was like, JJ, where's Wes? And he's like, I'm not sure. I'll go upstairs and check. Wesley! Wesley, where are you, buddy?
In the yard next door, Donna Hayes was looking after her 3 kids and 2 of their friends.
It was a beautiful day. It was very, very hot. I knew something major had happened. She let out one scream, and then she was completely hysterical from that point on. She just kept screaming and screaming and screaming.
Guys, come on, get out of the pool! Come on, you guys!
Paula said, Wesley's in the pool, he's drowned. And I yelled, get him up.
Donna immediately called 911.
I was just like, this is my fault. I was supposed to be watching him. He's dead because of me. I was completely terrified.
I saw Paula over her baby brother's body, rubbing his back. I clearly remember the smell of vomit and the purple. He was so purple, and I saw 2 white, big white eyes.
Oh my God!
Donna took over, and I ran inside to talk to 911.
Oh my God, I don't know what to...
I felt for a pulse, didn't feel anything. I was thinking, how do you do CPR? I gave him some rescue breaths. Then I knew his airway was open because his chest was beginning to rise. And then I went into chest compressions. And then back to rescue breathing. And I kept following the cycles. It was so hard. He was just so floppy and lifeless. I kept yelling, he's okay, Paula. Not knowing it, of course, but I just needed her to be able to calm down. But there was just nothing happening. I have no idea how long I was doing it for. It seemed like forever. Finally, I thought I saw his eyes move, and he started to make noises. I knew something was happening. I knew his heart had started, and I was just doing rescue breaths at that point, knowing that that was not going to hurt him.
Within 5 minutes of Donna's call, rescue units with the Burlington Fire Department arrived, including EMT Brian Trudeau.
When we got there, the child was already breathing. He seemed to be conscious, but he wasn't really responding to us. Donna reacted probably as calmly as anybody could have in a situation like that. I think there's a very good chance that he could have suffered some sort of brain damage, if not worse, had she not started the CPR.
Wesley was taken to the nearest hospital where his mother, Sue Caskell, joined him.
He opened his eyes, then he started crying. So I cried, and I told him, everything's gonna be okay, Mommy here, so you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine.
You getting tired, Wes?
Yeah.
2-year-old Wesley Haskell was released the next day without any sign of permanent injury.
The day after he came home, he was himself again. He was running around. He said butthead, and that, I was like, okay, he's fine now, and he's completely fine. I can't express how much I'm thankful for everyone that helped.
I never thought I'd be able to handle an emergency, but the fact that I knew CPR, it made me calm. Before we put up our pool, I wanted my husband to be certified in CPR. And he said, well, I've seen it on TV. I could probably do it. I said, no, you need to know the details. You have to take a course.
Hey, Brent. I don't know. What? Is that good?
Bob Haskell is thankful his son beat the odds.
It doesn't take long to drown. Never once did we ever consider putting a fence around the pool, but we're going to be doing that next week.
Chair over here, bud.
I learned never take your eye off for a minute, or else you have no idea where he'll wander off to.
Not as hot as the 4th of July.
I'm just so thankful that she was there. If Donna hadn't been here, I think my son would be dead.
It didn't really hit until I saw him again, that was when I finally realized what had happened. Knowing that you were looking at a baby that had no life in it, and you gave him the breath of life. I don't know any normal person without a medical background that's done that. It was just incredible. It was incredible.
Where's the ball? You want to play ball again?
Next. The 15 years that I've worked in an operating room, I've truly never seen an injury of this type on someone who's still alive.
On September 2nd, 1990, at a remote ranch outside Nashville, Tennessee, a group of friends had gathered for a weekend of hunting. Among the group were 3 paramedics, including David White.
It was a nice fall day. We got there before sunrise that morning and got out in the field. And probably around 9 o'clock, we decided that it was going to be too hot for the doves to fly. So we went up to the house and they were preparing lunch.
Kevin Wilson and Buddy Dixon had taken their ATVs over to visit a friend who lived nearby.
When we was coming back, we was racing, and I was winning.
One of the paramedics was the district chief of the Nashville Metro Fire Department, Lewis Mason.
We were really watching them because they were flying up through there. It was on a gravel road. They were making a lot of dust. So, usually that's what you'd just be looking at when you're just sitting around, just talking.
I noticed that Kevin was cutting across the pasture.
Well, y'all they come.
I stopped and looked across the field. I thought that he just flipped over and he was going to get back up. Went back over and see what I could do.
We really didn't notice what made him flip. It's so far away.
As I got closer, I saw that he was just laying there and he wasn't getting up.
I looked where the tall grass was, came down to the short grass, and I realized, I said, no, there's 2 strands of barbed wire there, and he's hit the barbed wire fence.
And that's when I called for the ambulance first, before I ever got to it.
Wrecker Service owner Ollie Wright grabbed his walkie-talkie and radioed the Bedford County Communications Center. But it would take 20 minutes before the nearest available ambulance could get to the scene.
David got there first and looks up, and I could tell from the look on David's face that there was something bad wrong.
Johnny Webb was the third paramedic on the scene.
When we got there and seen him, it was about the most devastating wound I've ever seen. It went from ear to ear. When all the way around his neck, and it was open probably about this wide. His voice box was laying on his chest. He had massive bleeding from both sides of his neck.
Honestly, my first thoughts is that we'll sit there and watch him die.
You need to see if you can get live flight en route.
I don't have the authority.
And 4, we have 3 Metro paramedics on the scene.
Because a district chief happened to be there, he was able to authorize the immediate launch of Life Flight.
They're wanting you to land on the scene. He's going down fast.
Gerald Melton rode to the barn to get his brother Gordon, who was an operating room nurse.
We had to be resourceful and use what we had. His trachea was severed, and he was actually breathing through the severed trachea right above the top of his sternum. So my main concern was to try to keep the trachea open so that he could breathe through it. Both external jugulars were severed and bleeding profusely.
We got a multi-trauma patient down here. It's pretty critical going down. We got a PJ just coming out.
As soon as he got to the scene, Gordon Melton began to help treat Kevin, who was his cousin.
When I first got out there, I saw Kevin laying on his side.
You get some blankets, we need a blanket and some towels.
My God, he's going to die. He's bleeding so much. 15 years that I've worked in an operating room, I've truly never seen an injury of this type on someone who's still alive.
Try to hold his head there.
Okay. Hold still, baby. Okay, I can't move my fingers too much there now.
Kevin started to regain consciousness, and I knew he would be shocked by what was happening.
Hold on still. Hold still, Kevin.
So I started talking to him. I just kept reinforcing we were trying to help him. He needed to go with us on this. Of course, he couldn't talk. His windpipe had been cut into. He wasn't moving any air through his mouth or nose. He was convinced that he was suffocating.
Just keep doing what you're doing. We'll be all right here. Okay, buddy? Just try to be still. Don't reach your hands up here in your throat, man.
Those ambulances here.
We started to lose radial pulse on him, and blood pressure is really fixing to bottom out, and that's one of the early signs of death. We had to replace the blood volume. It had to be done quick. We run 4,500 cc's of fluids in him right there in that field.
Somebody got a stethoscope?
Yeah, let's get a stethoscope. We need some O2.
I told him that we would put a tube into his windpipe to help him breathe.
No, it's going to choke you. All right, Kevin.
Keith, Kevin's brother, arrived in the field.
I have to hold still.
I stayed calm because I just wanted to help him as much as I could.
All right, Kevin, I'm here.
And he grabbed hold of my hand and held onto my hand as I talked to him.
Kevin. You got the tube and ready.
Somebody got a second bag?
We ran out of IV fluids pretty quickly. We used up everything they had in the ambulance.
When we continued.
As we approached Vanderbilt, he lost consciousness. His heart rate started slowing down. He quit breathing by himself. Kevin was beginning to die.
We're ready.
Land between the silo and the ambulance.
When we heard that Metro paramedics were on the scene, we wondered what they were doing out that far.
One of the flight nurses on board was Jane Herring. Though both of Kevin's external jugular veins had been severed, his friends had managed to keep him alive for the nearly 45 minutes it took to get the chopper to the scene.
Johnny, what do we have?
We ran into a barbed wire fence.
Johnny and David were anxious. Both of them had said, we didn't have anything to work with but our hands. David had more than his arms wrapped around Kevin. He had a lot of heart in there. They didn't want to lose this gentleman.
Keep him on his side now.
Every time they would put him onto his back to stabilize him, he would lose his airway.
Okay, loop that through, please. Keep your IV lines through.
We only fly with 2 nurses. We needed another person if this gentleman was going to make it alive.
Hey, you guys, don't forget this guy up here. You're going to have to be careful when you're lifting.
Kevin's cousin Gordon agreed to go.
I felt like I had my finger in the dam here, and I was certain that he didn't have a great deal of blood left in his body. Kevin was still conscious and talking to me. At one point, he asked me not to leave him. And I told him that I was with him for the whole ride here, that we were on our way to the promised land.
As we approached Vanderbilt, he lost consciousness. I called him and told him I needed to go directly to the operating room. We didn't have a lot of time left with Kevin. His heart rate started slowing down. He quit breathing by himself. Kevin was beginning to die.
We're ready.
I could feel his heart beating between my fingers. If we could just hold on for a few minutes more.
He's got absent breath sounds on the right at this time.
Okay. Do you want to move him on the board?
Okay, we'll put this along the board. So Dr. McCord here.
I had a real hard time of letting go of Kevin. So did Gordon.
The trauma team at Vanderbilt University Medical Center was led by head and neck specialist Dr. John Caniglio.
We started by gaining control of the bleeding sites and then went ahead and tried to reconstruct the tissues. There was a lot of contamination. We tried putting the crushed voice box and the swallowing passageway back together.
The operation had just begun when Kevin's parents, Thomas and Doris Wilson, arrived at the hospital.
We saw the ambulance go down, and I said, I just hope to God Kevin's not in. Never dreaming that that's where it was going to pick him up.
I'm not going to lie to you, okay? Kevin's in real bad shape. I'm very honest with my families. They deserve that, all right? There's a lot of tears because I didn't know if Kevin was going to live.
She said, right here is the man that if he lives, saved his life, and she was talking about Gordon.
But without Gordon here.
I mean, you're not prepared. You think you are, but you're never prepared for something like that.
By the end of the 6.5-hour operation, it was clear that although Kevin's voice box could not be saved, he would survive.
Each time after when we went in to see him and all, you could see the improvement in him. And the doctors really couldn't believe how he changed. He just seemed to get better.
2 months have passed since the accident took away Kevin's ability to speak normally.
I'm doing pretty good.
There isn't any.
But he's learning to speak again without any mechanical aids.
Nothing's getting stuck or hung up. He sees me and sees the voice therapist, and he wants to try the simplest way of voicing words called esophageal speaking, generating your own speech through your esophagus, not through the larynx.
At the wound.
And I think he'll do well because he's young and pretty motivated.
The scars have healed up real well, Kevin.
His will to live and recovery was something that I haven't seen in a long while. He kind of fooled everybody. Everybody thought he'd be in the hospital a long time, but he bounced back rapidly.
You're doing wonderful, and you're not riding that ATV, are you? That's not what your ma told me, but I'll believe you. Okay.
In all rights, Kevin should not have made it, but everything just connected.
The fact that he had 3 trained paramedics that happened to be on the scene within actually ran to him in a matter of 30 seconds. I'm not for sure as to what a miracle is, but there was a lot of things going in Kevin's favor that day.
Probably the most dangerous motor vehicle we've got is a three-wheeler. It's so easy to get hurt even if you're careful on them. It's amazing, it's unbelievable that the boy's alive.
It's truly the type of injury that he would have died just moments afterwards had he not been able to receive medical attention immediately.
I love them all. You talk about miracles and you hear about miracles. The paramedics brought Kevin back to us. They're fabulous, and we thank the Lord for them. And I think that every town should have the money to train paramedics.
Thinking, looking back on it, it kind of reminds you of how close this family is. We don't see each other every day. But we know who we are.
Mr. Shapiro, step out of the car, please.